Oh, hi, I'm Dana Berchman. Welcome to the Oh Hi Stories podcast. In this episode, I have the pleasure of sitting down with someone I adore and admire, my friend and former colleague, Contessa Brewer. You probably know her as a journalist at CNBC, but what you might not know is the fascinating path she's taken in her career, what fuels her passion for storytelling, and how she continues to navigate this challenging industry that we both love so much. I hope you'll enjoy our conversation as much as I did. I am so happy to have you, my friend and former colleague, join me today on this podcast. Hi. And thank you for taking time out of your busy life and day to come and chat with me. I'm so happy to have you. And obviously, we got a chance to work together. Gosh, it was almost like 15 plus years ago now. And I'm just so thrilled that you are still killing it in the industry and in this business, although it's changed a lot and is still changing. And so happy to talk to you about your journey, career, and as a working mom. You're someone that I so admire and, like I said, had the pleasure of working with. And after we worked together for a while, discovered that I actually went to high school with your brother, which is so amazing.
Yeah. And then went to go work for the city where my dad lives. And like, there's all these personal ways that our lives have intertwined. But it's so interesting because when you and I were at MSNBC together, it was one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had. My most favorite job was working in Palm Springs and being the morning anchor in Palm Springs. It was just I was young and the people in town sort of adopted me and gave me this great life. But my time at MSNBC really elevated my sense of the way the world works, the way that stories influence the mass consciousness. So where culture is a result of the stories being told and the stories that multiple people are buying into at the same time. That's number one. And number two, the world is changing so rapidly, and that news and good journalism still are important, but they rank so low now on what people think they need or want. And that's a tough thing for journalists. It's tough to work in an industry because this is not it takes a calling to be a journalist. And so when you don't have sort of massive sense of, oh, you're a journalist, that's great. Journalism is a cornerstone of a working democracy. When that doesn't exist, it takes away part of the reward that journalists get for doing the tough work.
That is so true. It is. You are so spot on about that. And I think it's a challenge that we all see as outsiders too. And from someone, like you said, in the industry who was there at a time. I love the culture piece of it too, because I started out my career at MTV at a time when I was working on election initiatives like Choose or Lose, and news really was my passion. And that was kind of the runway that I had there. And then reality TV kind of took that over. And that's actually why I made the move to MSNBC. And I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I remember in my interview, they asked why they would hire me. And I love that you talk about Palm Springs because there's all these routes to careers in journalism and in news. But I didn't come up through those ranks. I was a political science major and had gotten my master's in journalism and public policy, but I didn't come up through local news. And they were like confused by that. And I remember I said, but you branded yourself the place for politics. And I actually have this political background. And I remember one of the first times working with you and some of the other anchors, I think one of the reasons why also too, it was my favorite job was getting to help and storytell and write in this, not only the journalism piece, but this political piece at the time, which was also so critical, and to get to be a part of that. And I remember in the moment of them thinking, oh yeah, I guess people with political backgrounds also can do this work. And now obviously that's more common and you've got commentators and people that are coming in that are experts in the field. But you remember this as a critical time when that brand was changing. And so this is something you've been able to navigate through. And I think it's so right. And I would agree with you that these changes have reminded us all that journalism although it's more challenging than it's ever been, the work, it's more important than ever. And I saw this even in local government with social media where everything was questioned. And I used to think, really, like you're as close to the source as you can possibly get. And we're delivering critical services like your lights turning on and your toilets flushing. And yet you're kind of questioning how this information is delivered, which is really a challenge for us to continue to storytell and do that work. So how are you navigating this new world?
I mean, I'm mostly unplugging from social media. I was a really early adopter of using social media as a way to create a two-way street. I thought we're moving beyond anchors and TV hosts as the voice of God telling you how to perceive the world. Instead, social media gives viewers a way to talk back and broaden the conversation and maybe take the question and turn it on its head. I mean, I really remember using this around 2008 when Barack Obama was running for president and then in sort of ahead of the rise of the Tea Party, but we were at this critical moment with the great financial recession. People were
Mm-hmm.
losing their jobs. There were a lot of talking heads on MSNBC and elsewhere that would talk about really complicated financial issues. And I thought, let there's got to be a way that we can make this relevant and tangible to a wide variety of people. And that's when I started a segment called Get Real, where I would introduce whatever the politics were around the problem of the moment, but then let's bring it down and let's talk about how this affects real people in real ways, whether it's unemployment. I mean, today we would be doing this about tariffs. I'll give you a perfect example, and I digress on this, but when we're talking about the wildfires in California,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I cover insurance now. California was an insurance crisis before the wildfires ever happened. Now, the rebuilding process will become much more complicated if the Trump tariffs go into effect on Canada, Mexico, and China because of the sheer number, the volume of building materials required, so much of which comes from Canada, Mexico, or China. Two, if mass deportations continue, what you will see is work crews. I mean, the guys who are doing roofing and drywall and flooring, those work crews will get decimated and there will be no people to come in and do the work. And California is competing right now with Florida with hurricanes Milton and Helene and North Carolina and other places where big catastrophes have happened and the job of rebuilding is massive. And so that will be an unintended consequence of what the political policies are, what the fiscal policies are in Washington D.C. And we have to have a way to talk about that in a let's get real about what this really means. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is even in 2008 when I started to do that, it started to be seen through the lens of partisanship because of the way that MSNBC was shifting its focus. I was always a journalist. I do have an opinion. I'm pretty middle of the road and you can convince me to change my mind with a strong argument. And so when I started to embrace opinion journalism, that was my platform is like I'm a middle of the roader. I'm a common sense thinker. What are you going to do with what kind of a box do you want to put me in?
Can you put me in? Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want
I
to do that.
know.
I still think that we need that. But how do I deliver that?
Yeah.
How do I deliver those get real moments now when social media is used so broadly, where the sources of influence are no longer journalists who've worked hard their whole careers to be truth tellers? I don't know. I just find that a lot of what I see on social media is poisonous. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's detrimental to my own mental health. And I can see that things that used to be off limit in polite conversation are now being rewarded with lots of attention on social media, and it's leading to the destruction of polite society. And I do think, I mean, I want to be real, I want to be honest, but I also think kindness and politeness and civility still matter.
I'm with you. It's so crazy that you say this because I was just telling my friend the other night, you know, I always thought of myself as a middle of the road person too. And I worked 9 years with two quite conservative mayors on the city side, never had an issue. All of the sudden, things that to me, again, like I said, seemed like basic. And that was something we always tried to do too, was just like the keeping it real, was deliver this information and story tell in a way where you engage people and you can talk to broader audiences. And you're right. I think something that was missed in the whole election that we all know now upon reflection is there were so many things that were not reaching people and other misinformation or disinformation that was. And how do you reconcile that? And I said to my friend the other night, I said, I'm just kind of at a loss because I always thought of myself as that middle of the road. So where is my space? Where do I go? How do I continue to do that and tell stories and not feel like you said that you're being relegated to choosing a side, because so many of these issues are so critical to everyone? And I think the fires is a great example of that, a time of crisis where it impacted so many people, including my family. And I know you were there, and that was actually what prompted me to invite you. I always think of you, but when I saw the work you were doing there with a fire PIO, I was like, oh my God, this is such an important example of how local government and getting information out and using the media to do that, and how those relationships are so critical. And I thought it was so cool, the fire PIO ride along that you did. And so I'd love to hear more from you about where those opportunities are. And maybe that's it. I don't always see on the city side that they have PIOs like that. That was kind of where my work was focused on, and now is too, helping other cities to understand, to have professionals and journalists and people that are telling these stories on the government side too is really critical. Police officers and firefighters aren't always the ones that know how to connect best with an audience like that. And I trained, I think, 17 PIOs over the course of 12 years, like how to use social media, how to tell a story, and some are willing and open to doing it. But these are also opportunities for journalists and people that are maybe thinking about leaving the journalism career. I see an opportunity in local government, especially, to story tell. And so I'd love to hear from you that perspective of that experience you just returned from.
You know, it's interesting because you'll see at lots of different levels of government, and this happens in Arizona too, by the way, where you are, but take defensible space, which is widely accepted to be a crucial factor in wildfire mitigation. But defensible space works best when it's done at a community level. So if I live in the Pacific Palisades and I've cleared 5 feet of combustible shrubbery from around my house and planted succulents, and I've got not mulch, but gravel filling in my planter beds, I've done the job. I've heard the message. I'm doing the best to protect myself. But if my neighbors have lots of pine or other highly flammable shrubbery right up next to their house, it doesn't matter what I've done because their house is going to catch fire and my house is likely to catch fire too. So in order to get a full community, you can have policy that says the whole community has to do this or there will be consequences, and we're going to find you an economic incentives or disincentives work to get people to take action. But it's also that if you tell the story that, look, now's the perfect time for other stories to go in and say, look at this house is standing. What left this house standing and these two on this side not? Did they have ember resistant vents? Did they have rock mulch, like I was saying? What was the house stucco or brick rather than made out of plywood? All of that matters, and the stories about it matter. December 31st, I had actually done a story on CNBC about mitigation for insurance purposes, the way that you can actually build or modify after the fact your home or business in ways that help you resist natural catastrophes and potentially lower your insurance rates. Like I'm getting an earful about how much people are paying for property insurance. There's a reason for it. It's because it's expensive to repair or rebuild. So I did this story on December 31st with a focus on these new building materials that are fire resistant. It's pretty dramatic. The demonstration that was set up for me, this house that doesn't have any of these new building materials and this one that does, and how fast this one burned to the ground. And I just think you can't get past that story. But what has changed, Dana, is that when I started my career, half of all the TVs that were on when I was doing the news were turned to me.
Mm-hmm.
So the power of my storytelling was far greater than it is now, where there are so many sources of information and people have so many options that kind of message can be drowned out or not heard at all. It's a real shift. And I do think social media can help break through that noise. I do think the best storytelling can break through it, but we're just living in a different world now. And so you have to be a really powerful influencer in order for your message to be out and have immediate to go viral. Like that viral moment of the guy that I rode along with in California. He was the guy that saved the dogs, got on NBC News, and then went everywhere and went viral. I mean, he's now a well-known. Yeah, he's a hero.
He's everywhere.
Yeah, but that went viral for a reason, because it touched people's heart. But there's no way. I don't think that there's any way to tell ahead of time what's going to do that. What you need is PIOs who are willing to do it and do it and do it. You got to keep doing it. You can't just do it once and go, oh, I have this great idea for a video I think is going to go viral, and then give up on it. You have to do it again and again. And you have to make, I mean, we know this from old school journalism, but city council meetings are deadly boring, but they're so important. So the best storytellers, I'm not even going to call them journalists anymore. Like the best storytellers are the ones who can sit in that meeting and tease out the thread of what's the best narrative here. Like we're going to talk about putting compost bins outside. So now when people are going to put out their garbage and recycling, they're also going to be able to put out compost bins. How do I tell this story in a way that moves beyond the proposal that's now in city council? And great storytellers know how to do that. And I think what we're seeing again with the rise of social media is a lot of citizen journalists, where you maybe have not gone to journalism school, you've never been through a communications law class. It's irrelevant, because you care about your community and how to deliver the story of what's important or what should be important to your neighbors.
It's so true. And a couple of things. One, I did get a Justin Timberlake retweet, which put us on the map in Gilbert, Arizona. Yeah. That was critical to my success early on, but that's not going to always
is that
happen.
why Gilbert is so hot now? Like Justin Timberlake, totally. He did that?
Well, and because of my team, but yes. We made a video for his Can't Stop the Feeling when he was challenging groups, and we were probably the only city to do it. And he shared it on Facebook and he retweeted it and then gave the Gilbert, Arizona with the praying hands emoji. And then it was like, we had so many followers, and you're not always going to tag people and they're going to see it. You're right. But I think one thing I love to talk about, two things you bring up that are so true. Going where people are is so critical, because the people that go to those council meetings are usually, they're angry about something. They're not your average mom, busy working mom like you and me, who are busy living our lives. I always say you have to go to them, meet them where they are. And they care about what's happening in those meetings. People like you and me, we just don't have the time to go and sit in town hall and city hall, and usually don't unless we have a problem. And so those become very reactive, because you're listening to the people that have a grievance. But where's everyone else? I mean, when I started in Gilbert, I couldn't believe that the average age was 32 years old with 250,000 people. And I thought to myself, oh my God, like you wouldn't know that by looking at the city council. You wouldn't know that by looking around. Even in government, it was the challenge of going to people and engaging them that way. And I think that's what you're figuring out how
Wait,
to
do you
do
mean
in this industry.
Gilbert was young and
Very young.
it wasn't being reflected in representation at the city council level?
And still isn't. Yeah, at all. At all. We had a brief stint with a very young mayor, and she quit on the dais in the height of the pandemic due to death threats over mask mandates and other things. And so I think it's now preventing all of this kind of anger. And really, what I saw was an influx, like you did too, I'm sure, of social media for good, then suddenly almost being weaponized and turned against. It was like this, to me, sometimes we had 500,000 followers, and I thought, this is like the monster we've built that we now have to manage. And then it became that, well, this can't be trusted, and they have an agenda. And it was like, wait, what? So that all kind of shifted and turned. And when I would look around, again, the average resident living their lives isn't at those tables and represented. And sadly, what I see happening now, I think more in the last 4 or 5 years, is people don't want to run for local office. And that was kind of the whole goal, was to get people to think about these jobs in local government that were critical, or telling these stories and running for office. And now it's like, well, who would want to do that? And I think that's what we're also seeing in our line of work with journalism, which is like something we love so dearly. And it's like, it's terrifying to think about, well, what does the future of this industry look like if these jobs aren't respected the way I know they were when you and I first started out. And I see the same thing in local government with people running for office and elected officials. Is like, I'm not going to do that. And why would I subject myself and my family to that? And I mean, I faced a lot of that, and in the situation that I was in. And some of it is the creating the spaces for the loud minority, which I think we're seeing a lot on social media now. People don't come to tell you they love something.
No, algorithms won't feed you people just being normal. What the algorithms feed you is the most outrageous thing. So it keeps dragging you. It's almost like propaganda, where what you're getting keeps dragging you further and further and further to the extreme. And
yeah.
I personally do not like what I see. And so back in the day, when I started using social media on my show, and I put out here's my email address, and here's my Twitter handle, and here's my Facebook, and however you want to get hold of me, not only can you get to me, but you might see your message show up on my show. And it was,
yeah, I think I was with you then.
You were, of course you were.
Yeah.
It was successful, and it was new. And I was really, I think, among the first cable news anchors that really embraced it and used it. And I loved it. I would never do that now. And I don't engage. A lot of what I get is not worthy of engaging in. It's not people who want to, can you see that I have a fly here? Like, it's January. How do I have a fly in my home? But at any rate, it's not worthy of engaging in that anymore, because it's not people who want to have their mind changed. They're not open to a viewpoint that's different. The trolling has taken on epic levels. I'm just not interested. It's not good for my mental health. What happened when I left MSNBC? I started sleeping less because I needed less sleep. And it turns out, like, all of that, especially after 2010, the political vitriol, I thought had reached fever pitch. I had no idea it was going to go where it is now. But I realized that every day I was girding for battle, and in part because I had started to use social media, and I was getting all of this noise back at me that was unnecessary to the job of finding the facts, presenting the truth. And now I work in business news, and let me tell you, mostly that noise dies away. It's not that people aren't opinionated, and they are. It's just that I've become an expert in certain fields, and it's easier to deliver news as fact and not have that be questioned. It's not perfect, but it's easier than when I was working in general news, and especially in politics.
And isn't that a sad state of affairs, though? Who's going to do it if we don't? I think about that a lot, right? I left the situation that I was in for many of those reasons. One, I had built something that I wanted to try to scale and help others to do, and I knew I had done that job, but the vitriol was just, I mean, it was crazy. I had restraining orders, my children's school. It was just it
I'm
like you said, a
sorry.
fever pitch.
That's
Yeah.
terrifying. But what can change that? Passionate moderates. People
Mm,
who are really committed to being centrist need to start
mm.
saying, I'm super committed to hearing you out. I'm interested in your viewpoint and how you came at it and but I'm not interested in fighting over it. I'm passionate about being a moderate. It's an oxymoron. A passionate moderate
Mhm.
is this conundrum. And what are you going to do with that? But that is what we need. We need people who are middle of the roaders, who are intent on being great neighbors, good citizens, good listeners. If you can be a great friend to people who have wildly different views than what you have, then you're a passionate moderate.
I love that. I'm coining that. Passionate moderate. I think we have this is our new road path. I just had this conversation with someone. I love that. So tell me about parenting during that time. So one thing I was thinking was that like you're in your home, and in our day, that was not a possibility. So how much the industry has changed that you broadcast from your house, and there's the ups and downs to that for sure, right? I am too. I'm sitting in my home office, and after I left working with you and we left working together, you became a mom and you have twin boys, and how exciting and amazing, and you've been able to keep your crazy career through all these changes and get to be a mom in the greatest city in the world, by the way, which I still miss living in every day. Tell me how you navigate all of that.
I mean, this is going to sound probably very strange. You've probably never had anybody say this to you, but I'm really grateful for the time that I had with my children during the pandemic. What I mean by
Mm,
that is we were just this really close family unit. I got to work. I mean, I was still going outside to work. I was doing live shots. I think I was the only correspondent at CNBC who was really doing that, but mostly from my neighborhood. And my boys had an amazing nanny who was finishing her degree in elementary education. And so she came and she basically became their governor. She was Mary Poppins on steroids. And they made more progress in those first few months of lockdown than they had made all year. And
mm,
we had the most amazing time together. It just
I know.
it was a silver lining for me. I don't want to there were so many families that were desperate for real school and a quiet space to have a Zoom call. And I don't want to take that away. That was real. And I felt like even I said to my kids too much, not now, mommy's working, not now, mommy's working, not now.
Hmm.
Now they'll come in and I'll be on TV here from my Manhattan apartment and I'll be like, they know you cannot be on the internet because I need all of the internet bandwidth for my television camera. And you cannot make any noise and you can't make the microwave run and don't go to the bathroom and flush the toilet because in here you'll hear it. So they've been well trained at this point. But what an amazing opportunity. I'm using amazing a lot. I need to think of a different adjective. That it was so incredible to have that flexibility where now
Hmm.
I can pick them up and still come back and do TV. Where in the old days, if I needed to do a 5 o'clock TV live shot, I would miss picking up my kids and have to like send somebody else out it. And I think that the world has moved that part of where we are now has given
Hmm.
me so much more flexibility and I'm super grateful for it. And I think that all these CEOs who are mandating back to work are being really short sighted because I do get that there are people who take advantage of it and you're not getting as much productivity if they're not there sort of under the watchful eye of their boss. But for most of us, what it does is it said, okay, I need to take this half hour out of my day to do something for my family, but then I can also multitask and be in multiple places at once. And
Hmm.
and that gives us so much more freedom to be a great employee or entrepreneur or whatever, and be a great wife, be a great mother, be a great
Mm,
friend, be a great dog parent. I don't want to take away from that's important too. So
absolutely.
all of that
Yes.
gotten easy. I like where we are in terms of our workflows and how we can now see each other like this. And it's not quite as good as going to lunch together, but it's close.
I know. I agree with you completely. And in the government world, they really never did a great job of working remotely. And I was fortunate enough to be with a team and in a place where we figured out how to do it. We were already using Microsoft Teams before the pandemic and things like that, but most government organizations were not and were quick to return. And I think it is an inhibitor of why I started there when I had a 10-week-old and a 2-year-old, two in diapers. And I think it was 7 to 6. And I never had dinner at home with the family. I never took my kids to school. And then post pandemic, and even now running my own business, my daughter's in high school. Can you believe that? High
No, I
school. It's
cannot.
crazy. She's in high school and I drive her to school in the morning and that's our time together. That's when she talks and like holds my hand. I mean, I am appreciating those moments because they're fleeting and she's going to leave me soon to New York for sure. And I am just like, I get to do this and still work. And so, how amazing is that opportunity? I'm with you. My parents said the pandemic was their favorite year of all time because we kind of became a pod and they helped us with school and they're both former teachers. So they loved it. And when they tell my kids that it was the greatest year of their life, my kids will look at them like, what? We didn't see our friends. We couldn't go anywhere. Like,
Right.
what are you talking about? But so I know that feeling that you felt. It was like the world slowed down and shifted.
It's almost
And
like survivor's guilt though, because because
yeah,
it what I understand that for so many people it was the worst period of their lives. And so I'm not trying to take that
yeah.
away. And I'm also not being Pollyanna about it and just, well, I choose to look at this through optimism. But again, partly because of our circumstances and where I work and the ages of my children were little, so they didn't really care
Hmm.
about friends and all that yet. They liked having the attention from their mom, and they loved Kellyanne. So the fact that they got Kellyanne all day, every day, instead of having to go to school, they thought was like being on vacation.
Amazing. I
Kellyanne,
know.
by the way, are like, I'm going to make her listen to this podcast. Kellyanne is now a
Yes.
kindergarten teacher in Colorado. And I just think those kids, those families have no idea how lucky they are to have her. That she, like the world, if the world needs great journalists and great storytellers,
Mm.
the best teachers are also great storytellers and know how to pivot and weave and meet kids where they are. Great, great teachers are doing the job of a similar job to journalists, that they have to figure out how to take medicine and then wrap it in a spoonful of sugar and get it to go down.
Oh, that's so good. I love this. I know. It is it's so true. I stay up at night thinking about this too. What is the future of journalism? What are the future of teachers? What are these critical jobs that are so important? And you're right. It's I say this all the time in storytelling and I see this a lot now in my government work as well is there's great work happening and if no one knows about it. You're doing all these amazing things, but how come you can't get it to where people are? And like you said, it used to be that the TV would turn on and you didn't have that challenge.
Right.
But now, not only do you have to go tell that story, you've got to figure out how to get it to the masses and you've got to figure out how to stay relevant. You've got to figure out how to be growing that audience. And then you build that trust. And then how do you keep them coming back? And I, kudos to you though. You are doing it. I mean, I'm in awe. You're doing it. And so where do you see 5 to 10 years from now if you're like looking down that path?
I really I'm enjoying being part of business news. I'm enjoying learning this company stories and where they're going and industry stories and the same thing, picking out the threads of narrative and being able to determine where that goes. TV's changing. My company is going to be spun off by NBC, and I'm not really sure how that's going to change the platform or the scenario. I just know that good storytellers are always in demand. And I think AI is going to change our job a little bit and make it easier in some ways and also challenge us in other ways, that we have to be creative and adaptable and flexible. And the older we get, the harder that is to sort of like budge us from our rut. But I, I've been really lucky that CNBC is like part two of my long TV career, and it's really focused on business. And so I don't know, part three might be business itself, or maybe I'm going to follow in your shoes and be an entrepreneur. I think that seems very rewarding and also terrifying. So, but I'm going to keep the door open either way. Maybe you'll have advice for me on that front if I ever go in that direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They need storytellers everywhere. And it's been so interesting for me to see, you know, all of those amazing things, like you said, that we learned in our favorite job ever, because it really was amazing.
It was a great
You
job.
don't know it in the moment when you're in the heyday. You know, it's like, oh no. I said this to someone the other day. I said, oh my God, like it's kind of like parenting, right? Like you want to stay where you are in the moment. You don't want to be wishing for them to be little again. My mom always said, you got to enjoy right where you're at, because you can't go back. But there are those times when you think back to those situations and you think, I thought to myself, I was 23 years old and I was working at MTV in New York City. And then I was working with you and Andrea Mitchell and people that Nora O'Donnell, people that I admired and still admire in this field. You know, that was the dream job. And then I saw opportunity to take all of that I've learned and share it in other places. And so, it's the sky's the limit whenever you want to do.
When you get a dream job and you're also good at your dream job, and you were excellent at your dream job. So all these listeners and all the people who are benefiting from your advice, they're really fortunate too. And we should make them listen to this so that they can hear me say so. I really appreciated all the work that you did when we were working together.
Oh, thank you, Contessa. And right back at you. And I learned so much from you. Like I said, admire you, still do to this day, and am grateful to know you as a colleague and a friend. And even just thinking about this conversation, how perfectly timely it is in the world and for people to hear. And I'm just so grateful that you took the time out of what I know is a crazy busy schedule to talk with me. So thank you. And thank you for your work, and keep going. We need more people like you. And I'm going to be thinking about this for a long time.
Thank you, Dana. Nice to see you. Nice to catch up.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ojai Stories podcast. Please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice, and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. And visit our website at ohaicommunications.com.